Good morning. Welcome to our 21st virtual job spotlight. This month we are kicking off architecture and construction virtual job spotlights with our speakers. And our job spotlights here in Northeast Wisconsin are sponsored by CESA 8, and I'm Lynn April, the Director of Education for Economic Development at CESA 8. Along with me is Allison Bowie from NWTC, and we also receive help from CESA 7, the Ahnapee Youth Apprenticeship Consortium, UWGB, and Inspire Northeast Wisconsin. So our two guests today, which are going to be talking about architecture, are Elisa Hornick, who is a landscape architect and designer with McDonald Property Services, and Dan Pecor, who's an architect with Delires. And just a reminder, we have two more April spotlights coming up on architecture and construction. So we will get that information to you when we send the follow-up email. Just a reminder of our norms. The meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast through our website through Inspire Northeast Wisconsin. As we have folks join, they will be muted and the video capabilities will be turned off. We will be sharing presenters' slide decks, so you'll be able to see those right from the main screen if they have slides. If we do have attendees leave the meeting, they may not be able to get back in, but if we have attendees with questions, please do definitely add those through the chat. And we never anticipate needing to do this, but we do have the ability to remove anyone from the meeting if they are becoming distracting. So our first guest today is Elisa Hornick, who is landscape architect and designer with McDonald Property Services. Welcome, Elisa.
Thank you. Okay, you can hit the next slide.
All right.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So I've been in the landscaping for probably 9 years now. I started out when I was 16, just got a car, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And this is something that I kind of fell in love with because I always enjoyed nature and the beautiful things. And I also liked having that design aspect where I could create it. So those two aspects kind of went together and I found it a career path that I absolutely love. So I got started out in high school. I went to St. Thomas Aquinas Academy, and there gave me a good kind of outlook on the broad aspect of design. So in environmental design, you can do anything from like golf courses, you can do small backyard plantings, you could do big industrial parks. Like there's a whole range of design things that you can do, but the key is to get started early. So in high school, I was involved in the environmental club and not really a greenhouse because we didn't have one, but more the landscaping maintenance around the property. So definitely take courses in high school that can start leading you further into those things that you like and that are interested in. Next slide. From after high school, I went to UW where I started with my gen ed. So I got everything that I needed for the basics out of the way in a year and a half. And for me to get done in such a short period of time, I took courses like the advanced courses or the college credit courses. Those really helped me to kind of progress my college career a little further. So take a botany course if there's one offered. Botany is I think it's the coolest class you can take because you dissect plants and know their characteristics and how they work in their environments. And it's kind of cool knowing where your food comes from or the grass that you walk on and the trees that grow. So that's definitely a good one to take. And then spend time in the greenhouse as well, because this will familiarize yourself with the plants that grow in this area, or maybe some of the plants that grow in more tropical regions. And it gets you familiar with the environment that they thrive. Next slide. After that, I went to the University of Minnesota, and I went out there for 2.5 years before I graduated in 2019. With taking the gen eds at UW it allowed me to strictly focus on landscape design when I was out in Minnesota. So there was every course I took was landscape focused. If it was in environmental or turf management class or understanding the history of the landscapes, that was all included within my 2.5 years out there. We also learned how to use some of the software programs that I use on my day-to-day basis, like AutoCAD is a very big one. I'm sure for any architectural career that you go into, AutoCAD is a good one to learn. And then Adobe software and GIS is a good one to incorporate with that as well. Next slide. So this is an example of one of my college credit studio projects. This one I took I believe it was 100 acres that was a shopping mall, and we got to develop it into a community space. So the LEAD program is a very good program to do your projects within because it's very environmentally driven. So there's a lot of points that you need to check off where like using materials that are within 50 miles and having enough green space and the water runoff. So it's definitely very future driven to how landscape designers can improve current situations today and make it profitable for years to come. Next slide. This is another example where we took the City of Ramsey Greenway system. So this was like a walking trail that was kind of underdeveloped, and we got to take the whole trail, which I believe was like 28 miles, and incorporate it with different environmental activities and seasonal activities and interesting things that families can do year-round that brings them a little bit closer to nature and give it the appreciation that it deserves. Next slide. How I got here. Okay, so when I was 16, I started at a local landscaping company, just watering plants. It sounded kind of boring, not really the most entertaining job ever, standing there watering plants, but it allowed me to learn the basics of what I needed for any plant that I put in the ground today. I know if it's sun or shade, I know how big it gets, I can answer any question that a customer would have about any of the shrubs, plants, perennials. So even like the little jobs that don't seem important back then are definitely important now because it progressed me so much further in my career. They didn't teach us plants in college, so it was definitely a bigger step for me to get into the position that I am today. And then after I got done at that landscape company, I went in and installed hardscapes. So hardscapes is like your patios, your retaining walls, any of the hard structures that go into the landscaping. And with this job, it helped me see how things got installed. So in order to do the estimating and the designs, you kind of need to know how they go in and what areas they will work and see how to get the best design out of all the knowledge that you have, especially when estimating jobs. Every job is not the same, which is why I love designing because it's always a challenge. But you need to know like the hours and the labor and the materials, everything that goes into that job in order to estimate it and be profitable. Next slide. And then schooling got me or allowed me to get a bachelor's of environmental design with a focus in landscape design. So like I said earlier, this can be taken into some DNR stuff, some parks like campgrounds, some golf courses, city planning is pretty much a baseline of anything that you can imagine dealing with outside landscaping. And during college, I worked for the maintenance department, like the landscaping maintenance department on school, which allowed me to get into it was like a student position for designing under two landscape architects that were on staff at the University of Minnesota. So it was a cool opportunity for me because I got to design some of the like community areas that actually got installed on campus. So I put my little mark out there. And then right before I graduated, I got hired at a landscaping company in Appleton. So I worked there during college, and then before I graduated, they hired me on as a full-time designer. And then after 2 years there, I moved to the east side of Green Bay and am now the lead designer at McDonald Property Services. Next slide. So this is an example of the design that I'm currently working on for some of the property here. we wanted to incorporate a lot of seating areas and bring in kind of the nightlife down here, but also have it very clean and simple during the day. A lot of the area can be utilized for many different things. Like I think there's a restaurant that would like to move in. So we can do those igloo things that are out on the lawns that we kind of see in Titletown area. So a lot of the cool new features we can also utilize in this space. Next slide. This is another example. So it kind of ranges on the scales of designs that I do as well. It could be your little backyard planting or the foundation planting around the house, or it could be acres of land that need to be developed into future community projects. So this one is pretty cool because it kind of incorporates everything in a landscape, but also has the pool aspect and the pergolas and the gas fire pits and grade change. So this was definitely a all-around landscaping job. That was kind of interesting because there was a lot of grade change that brings in other challenges that we need to face on the project, but in the end, this will be an awesome project installed. Next slide. What I do in a day-to-day. So we get a call in from a potential customer and we set up a schedule to go out and meet with them to walk the site and see what they kind of envision for their property. Then I go and take the measurements and then I bring them back to the office where I put them into our software program. From there, I do all the designing needed. And so I like to be creative in all my designs. And so it's not like what the neighbors have, I guess, so which makes the customers happy because it's unique to their own property. And then I'll go and talk with the customer and walk them through the design. That way, if they want to make any tweaks or changes or have other ideas that they came up with in the meantime, we can discuss all of that. And then we can go back to the planning stage. Once I have the project all perfect how they want it, then I get to ordering the materials that are needed and the project gets put on the calendar. And then once we actually start installing it, I'll go out on site and make sure everything is going smoothly and answer any questions that the customer or the crew installing it may have.
Boy, that is
Next
quite
slide.
the backyard.
Yeah, that one was pretty cool too. And then the skills that you'll need to further yourself in a position like this, definitely some sort of AutoCAD knowledge. It doesn't have to be knowing everything about it, but you still need to know the basics, the line work, the line weights, contours, everything that you'll need to get a visual representation like that. And that program is actually called Dynascapes, which is a AutoCAD program specifically for landscaping. And then real-time landscape or UVision, those are good for 3D renderings. So we can take a plan like this and have it popped into a 3D and so the homeowner can see exactly what their project will look like. And then project management skills is another good thing to have because you can have 4 projects going on at a time and you definitely need to know how to manage your stress levels and the complications that come with it and how to solve those things quickly. Like I mentioned earlier, plant knowledge is a big thing to know. Even if it's just your standard 100 plants, it will get you further ahead. Being creative in every project, I think that is kind of a must because it sets yourself above the next person that is doing the same job. And then good communication skills. It is very important to have that with the homeowners, with the clients, and with the crew installing the work. So that way there's no miscommunication and it makes the project go a heck of a lot smoother.
Great. So a couple of questions. What's the biggest project that you have worked on so far?
Biggest projects. Commercial wise, it was probably that 100-acre project where we got to design it. I know it was in a studio class, but that was probably the biggest land area that I got to work within. Residential, it was, I think, just under 4 acres. And it was on a peninsula. So it was overlooking the water on 3 sides. It was absolutely gorgeous. But there was probably a good 3 months worth of work on that project.
Wow. So if you had to pick one favorite regional plant that you work into your designs, what would that be?
My favorites. I like the Royal Frost River Birch because it's a little different. And I love the white bark and the multi-stem, and then it has purple leaves. So I think it definitely is a outstanding plants to the rest.
Awesome. Allison, do you have any questions in the chat or of your own?
Uh, there are none in the chat. My question is, what's your favorite part of all of it? What do you right now? What's your favorite part?
My favorite part would probably be seeing it. I like the design and creativity part, but I really love seeing it installed and finished and the customer happy. Like it's such a great feeling when you're like, hey, I designed this, this was all in my head, put it into paper, and now look at what we installed and how beautiful it is. So that'd be my favorite part.
Okay. And what do you, were you always creative, like as a young person, or did that creativity develop? I was just curious about that.
I was always pretty creative. I think I got more into the arts probably middle and high school. So I started drawing and kind of seeing things in a 3D perspective and a 2D perspective, and how like you can take something that you're looking at and morph it into something even better. So I think it started out when I was younger.
Mhm.
All right.
It's great to see. Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Mhm.
Thanks for that great information. And we will move to our second guest, who is Dan Pecor, an architect with Deliriers. So I'm going to stop sharing and go to my speaker view so that we can see Dan.
Hello there. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with NWTC and talk with all the students listening to this, and just to give a perspective on the design field. I've been in the architectural and structural design field for 35 years now. It actually started before CAD was a thing. My first drawings was actually pencil drawing on the drafting board on paper. And one thing about that is that there's certain skills that you learn by doing hand drawing that, from my experience, have seemed to get a little bit lost, I think, in the CAD world. Things like how the drawings look and how they read. One big thing is line weights, for instance, the thicknesses of lines and how they show up on our drawing. Different types of hatchings and fills and pochés and that kind of thing that sometimes get lost in the CAD world as far as the how a drawing reads and looks. So that's one thing I'm grateful for having that experience, kind of that old school experience. Is I help me carry it into my CAD usage now. Like I said, I've been doing this for 35 years. It was shortly after I got started in my career that AutoCAD started to become somewhat mainstream in the industry. So I started using that back in 1985, I believe. And then switched to Autodesk Revit when that became available. That was right around the early 2000s, I think. I started using that one. And I've been using Revit ever since. Actually, if I think about how I got started in this, when I was a little kid, I was always drawing. I always loved to draw things. I was kind of drawing things from different perspectives. I found myself drawing a lot from sort of like 1 and 2 point perspectives. Drawing buildings and things like that, different landscapes, just for fun, because I enjoyed art when I was a kid. And then I had my first actual drafting class in 8th grade. 8th grade, the industrial arts program at junior high. Took my first mechanical drafting class, and from that point I was hooked. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I consider myself fortunate in that regard that I was able to kind of get a good feel for my career path early on. I knew that I took my drawing skills and I put them into more of a technical format. It just clicked for me. So I stayed with it, continued on with that, and now currently do architectural and structural design. Most of the design work I do currently with Deliriers is residential. we tend to specialize in homes that are $1 million and above. So very kind of high-end housing is what is Delir's forte. But I've also got plenty of experience in commercial and some light industrial work, office warehouse type buildings, some schools, hospitality. Over the years, I've covered most of the types of projects that there are, at least in this area. So, that's one thing I'm also grateful for is my experience. I graduated from the NWTC in their model building program, actually. I thought that was an interesting field to get into because it combined the best of drafting and drawing that I enjoyed doing with model building, which, almost every kid my age has built a model car once or twice in his life, or a model airplane. So to me, that sounded exciting. And I took that program, and actually my first career job was doing model building for a company in Minneapolis. Now that only lasted for a little bit less than a year, and it was just kind of to do some specific projects, and then they thinned out that business. And I took my skills and started going more into the drawing and design areas. So I got a little bit out of the model building and more into the design and drawing, and I've kind of stuck with that ever since. Started out working for a structural steel fabricator, doing shop drawings for steel. Got to work on some nice projects in downtown Minneapolis, some of their skyscrapers. And they're famous, Minneapolis, if anybody knows, Minneapolis is famous for their skywalk system, their second floor bridge system that connects buildings throughout the downtown area. I was able to design and draw the steel for a few of those. That was very interesting work. But then I started getting more into discovering some design build opportunities. And that's actually where I learned most of my skills and knowledge in the construction field. Design build was working for design build companies was a big learning experience. If anybody's not familiar with the term design build, it usually refers to a company that does in-house design and construction. So the company takes care of this, what they call a turnkey approach, where you just talk to one person from the start to finish, and your project is done until they turn over the keys at the end of the project. That's where I learned most of my skills, because I was able to work directly with the job superintendents and the construction people that were actually building the projects that I was drawing. And there's nothing quicker to learning how to do your job than a disgruntled construction guy coming into your office and hitting you on the head with a set of drawings, saying, "Hey, how am I supposed to build this?" So from that type of learning experience, you gain a lot of knowledge working with the actual people that build projects you're working on. That was fortunate for me. I've had more than half of my career experience has been with design build, and currently Delir's is a design build company as well. Now I guess we could talk about the things that I typically do in a week. I work typically with making construction drawings for projects. So what we'll do is we'll meet with a client who wants to build a new house or to put an addition on the house. Or we also do some small commercial work, maybe dentist office remodel or some condos, that type of thing. And we'll meet with a client, get their design ideas, put together some schematic drawings. So there's kind of a process that we go through with the design phase. First process would be meeting with the client, getting their design ideas and thoughts, what they would like to do. And then we go into what we call schematic design, where we just put some simple drawings together to give the general intent of the design. Not a lot of detail, not a lot of notes and dimensions and such, just to get the layout. Then we meet with the client, see if they like that. And from there, we work into design development, which would kind of be the second stage of a project. At that point, we're putting together some more detail in the project. Now that is with the intent of to have our estimating department be able to take a look and be able to put some pricing projects. So the second step would be to put together a set of drawings that has a little bit more detail, a little bit more notes and dimensions, and then a price to the project. And we propose, bring that package to the client, and they get their blessing or shoot it down or make their changes, whichever direction that wants to go. The third step for a design project like this would be the construction drawing phase. That's where we worked through all the design issues. We've solidified the design for the client. They've signed off on it. And we've agreed to go ahead with a specific design. And then we assemble the drawings for construction. Now, if anybody remembers going back to talking about building models, I remember back when I was building model cars, every model car came with an instruction booklet. Tell you, okay, this is how you glue piece A to piece B and piece C to D, and paint this way and put these details on here. Building construction drawings are essentially that same thing with a little more detail involved. But what I'm essentially doing is creating a set of drawings, an instruction booklet to build the structure that we're looking at, whether it's a house or an office building or a school. It's my job to communicate to the field guys and girls what to build, how to put this thing together, how to, all the detail involved, how beams fit together, how connections happen, how roofs intersect. Those are all the details for the builder itself. So the construction drawing phase is actually for the builders, for the construction people. At that point, the client is very much aware of their design. And then that's our instruction set. That's what we use to build the project. And that's what I do. I'll put together the sets. I work with the clients, talk with the clients about their design ideas, put together drawings through the whole phase, the schematic design, the design development, and the construction drawing phase. So that kind of, I guess, sums up what I do. If there's any advice I could give for students, I guess I would say one thing is, don't necessarily feel that you have to, especially for the high school students out there, or people who are just getting into thinking about their career and their future. Don't feel you have to lock into your career right off the bat for the rest of your life. I found throughout my experience that there's lots of opportunities to adjust your career path. Maybe your career path takes a slight adjustment, maybe something semi-related to what you started out with, or maybe even something totally different. And that's okay. Just plan for what you want to do to get started, and go with that route. Don't necessarily concern yourself with the rest of your life. Things change all the time. You may find that your career path may change as well with it. Another thing that I would recommend, if somebody is actually wanting to get into architecture, specifically into architecture and architecture design, it's probably a good idea to actually go for a bachelor's degree program to a college, to an actual, I believe the architecture program is generally a 6-year program through a lot of universities. It's something I wish I would have done it's the only way in this country to get an architectural license. To be a licensed architect, you have to actually have the 6-year degree. Something I wish I would have done in my career that I did not do. I mean, I still have, after 35 years, have most of the knowledge that an architect would have, but I just don't have that license to attach to my name. And it's worked for me just fine so far, but there's times when I wish I would have gone to college to got the full degree and the license. And also another point that perhaps you could explore is once you find that let's say you get into a certain field in design, architecture, or construction, you may find that field might point you in directions of other opportunities in the same and related fields. For instance, design work could lead to different areas in construction, like project management or estimating, or business development. We have people here that we call business development associates. They're basically our salespeople. They're kind of our first contact to our clients, and they're the general client contact throughout the project. So they're not doing any of the nuts and bolts technical work, but they're doing the upfront customer client contact. So there's different avenues that you can explore in this field, and so please be open to that, and just keep your eyes open to different things that might interest you as you go along in your design career. I guess that's all I have for right now. If unless there's any questions that
There is a question. Yes.
okay, go ahead.
So we have a tech ed teacher here
Okay.
with his CAD class. In your experiences, what sort of hands-on carpentry experiences or classes, if any, are integrated into the CAD Architectural College curriculum? So what sort of hands-on carpentry experiences or classes are integrated into CAD Architectural College curriculum?
I'm not completely familiar with the curriculums of the colleges. I haven't explored that in many years, but I believe I don't believe they have very many hands-on opportunities. The school courses generally cover the learning topics, the details, the whys and hows, but to if somebody ever had a chance to work in the field on a project, that would be the best way to get your experience with the hands-on nuts and bolts. And I recommend that highly, because understanding how construction works definitely helps in design, especially the detailed portion of design, where you need to tell people how to connect components, how to install components, how to install things like flashings and different weatherproofings, and just the small nuts and bolts of a project.
Yep.
Generally, you're more apt to find that out in the job, in the field, than you are in school.
Yep, and I do know not to fully answer the question, on the 21st, we do have our architectural technologies instructors, our faculty here at NWTC. They will be talking about the curriculum. So we'll just make a note to make sure we get that to you, that curriculum specific information. There is a lot of hands-on. The architectural technology students work hand in hand with the architecture folks and the engineers, and you learn it's a very intense coursework, and I can't do justice to speak to the intricacies of it, but just so you know, we'll get you an answer just on the 21st though.
And in many instances, those technical college courses and associate degrees can then be rolled into that bachelor's degree program or that 6-year program for architecture. So that's really kind of almost the best of both worlds, because you're getting that hands-on at the technical college level, but then you can roll that into your bachelor's degree and get the design and architecture classes there as well. So we will definitely be talking about that on the 21st. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dan. And
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
And that wraps up our architecture and construction virtual job spotlight for this week. We will be back next week we'll have guests in electrical and civil engineering, a carpenter, and a millwright. So we'll have really quite a variety next week at our virtual job spotlight. And I did send out the survey to everybody this morning along with the link. So please make sure you go to the survey after you've watched the video or you've attended our virtual job spotlight and give us feedback on what you'd like to see next. So I want to thank again both of our guests again for joining us. This was great information about architecture in very different aspects of architecture, and the video for this will be available on our website shortly. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.